Good morning, everyone. Well, what kind of energy is this? Like, good morning, everyone. Awesome. Okay, so let's just start. Roderick, who are you?
Hi, morning everyone. My name is Roderick. I'm a managing partner at East Ventures.
Okay, so today's topic is on like integrated ASEAN, right? So I mean, first of all, I will ask Roderick like, what that means. More importantly, I think for this crowd in this room is to understand like what this means for us and essentially like where are the opportunities. So Roderick, what does an integrated ASEAN actually mean?
Sure. Where do I start? Okay, I think, look, we're all here in Indonesia, right? And Indonesia is, a very important part of ASEAN. ASEAN itself is a group of a regional sort of cooperation between 10 countries in the Southeast Asia part, which was started 56 years ago in 1967 with 5 original founding members, right? And over the years, it started off as a political bloc, right? Looking at peace and security in the region, right? And over the 50 plus years it's been around, it's grown into 10 member with one more observer member state, which is East Timor, which is waiting for their full entry into the ASEAN. It's also grown from just political or peace and security membership into socio-cultural as well, and also economic participation. So I think it's probably just behind the European Union, right? I think the second sort of most successful regional kind of group, I guess, globally, right? And Indonesia was the chair of the ASEAN Summit this year, which was hosted twice. I think first time in May in Labuan Bajo, with all the leaders of the region. And then the second one in the first week of September was ASEAN Plus. So it was ASEAN leaders, but also leaders of our dialogue partners as well. Yeah.
Okay, so with an integrated ASEAN, like how does it apply to the tech community? What kind of opportunities, that founders and also investors can look forward to?
Yeah, I think specifically, right? I was talking about 3 sort of areas, right? I think political, sociocultural, and economic, right? When we talk about integrated ASEAN, right? I think probably the closest thing to that is the economic side, I guess, right? So it's how do we look at the whole ASEAN region, right? As one sort of inclusive area where there could be more trade and investments as well, right? And one of the things that we've looked at in the region is like ASEAN's economic growth in the past 5 years has been very good, despite the challenges globally and whatnot, right? But even within that, right, a lot of the investments in the region has been through foreign direct investments from outside of the ASEAN region, right? So one of the things that we wanted to look at further as well, from our point of view, is to see how can there be more intra-ASEAN investments, right? So we do believe, right, the next 5-10 years, right? Today, ASEAN as a bloc is about $4 trillion economy combined. Almost 700 million people live in the area, right? And the next 5-10 years, the economic outlook is still very positive. So in terms of certain sectors, including even climate, electric vehicle, supply chain movement, right, financial sector, there's going to be quite a bit of opportunities. And what a lot of the people within ASEAN wants to promote as well is how can we do more intra-ASEAN investments, right? And not just looking outside in, but within the region as well, as an inclusive sort of economic cooperation area.
So specifically speaking, you mentioned a couple of like, I would say tech verticals. You mentioned about climate, you mentioned about electric vehicles. So how would these tech verticals flourish under the integrated ASEAN? Because at the end of the day, right, like we in the people in this room, it's to make an impact, right? Build a product that people want. And second of all, right, if it's a product that people want, then there's an upside in terms of like the investment, right? In terms of like time, sweat, and also capital. So just trying to really understand how does it link, right? Because like, say for example, if before we have an integrated ASEAN, right? And of course, this is not like a binary thing, it's a progressive thing. We have like regional companies like Grab, C Group, and they do really well, right, regardless. But as ASEAN becomes more integrated, right, I really want to understand, like, what does it mean for like startups? And how does it change the way that a founder would build? And how would it change the way that investor would invest?
Yeah, I think there are natural sectors, right, within the region that lends itself more to maybe regional cooperation, right? I think from our own portfolio, Traveloka is a good example, right? I think they started in Indonesia. They were one of the first ones, first startup to go regional as well. And travel is very natural to be regional, of course, right? So you fly to different countries, you stay in different countries and whatnot, right? I think you mentioned other examples as well, right? I think Grab and others which has businesses across the region, right? But if you look at opportunities going forward, right? I think we are trying to identify which sectors makes a lot of sense too, right? I'll give you examples, right? I think one potential example is within this whole mobility, electric vehicle, energy transition space, right? So on the bigger collaboration, one of the legacy projects that was pushed in the past few months was ASEAN Net Zero Hub and a Carbon Center for Excellence, right? Where there could be one standard across Southeast Asia or ASEAN regions, right? And rather than just multiple things, right? More specifically, we were talking, for example, how we can, rather than compete with each other, different countries in terms of some of this value chain, potentially work together. Let's say for an electric vehicle product, potentially the chip could be from Malaysia, the battery, which Indonesia has a lot of nickel and whatnot, could be from Indonesia. The manufacturing, where Thailand is very good at it, could be from there and whatnot, right? That could be an example of how an integrated economic ASEAN opportunity could be, right? Other than that, I think on the financial services side as well, the other legacy project was around one QR for all the region. Our governor of central bank was very proud during the event that he was showing that you can pay using a local QR in Indonesia, but using a wallet from Thailand, let's say, for example, right? So with less barriers and I think more integration across the region, there will be different opportunities across sectors, right? Again, some might be more natural, some might take a little bit more effort in terms of how people would integrate to that. Supply chain is another example maybe, right? Where, I think movement of goods is natural across trade and the region, but then it's not as seamless, so you'll have to coordinate across multiple stakeholders, maybe both public and private, to do something like that. But regardless of all that, I think for investors such as ourselves, it opens up for new opportunities for sure for our portfolio companies to either expand through the multiple countries in the region, but also to think about working with other companies within the region and how can they complement and not just do things by themselves potentially.
Okay, so let's be specific, right? What are the companies that you're looking at right now that maybe you have already invested or you're thinking of investing, and why?
Yeah, I mean, I think just following the same trend, right? I think one of the areas that we've invested historically as well is around maybe financial fintech or whatnot, right? Where it could be that a few of these companies have multiple countries or multiple operations, right? I think we have Sendit, for example, right? I think Moses was here yesterday. I think he was talking also about how his business have grown and expanded in the region. But that's an example of one things that within our portfolio that looking are more regionally, right? We have other businesses, of course, like Traveloka and whatnot, that have done more regional sort of exposure, I guess, right? Beyond that, I think one of the things that I'll say as well is probably, and fresh off the thing that Wilson was here with the Minister of Health yesterday, talk about is healthcare potentially, right? This COVID-19 and the pandemic exposes how fragile the infrastructure for healthcare in the whole region. And we do think that substantial investment in the healthcare space is necessary. Again, one of the projects that was pushed this past few months was ASEAN Buck Health Institute across Southeast Asia to look at policies or healthcare policies together as well. In Indonesia in particular, we just had a new bill of health, which was ratified a couple of months ago by, and that will open up new opportunities. So I think fintech is one, maybe healthcare is another, climate and energy transition is another, maybe that we've been looking at the region and then see how we can invest more into an integrated ASEAN companies around those regions, I guess. Yeah.
Are there specific companies that you can name?
I think we are still looking at a lot of those companies. I can't disclose any ones in particular that I think we're still looking at, but yes, I think, and if you have any of these companies that are interesting for these different reasons, please feel free to come to me or to us, and then just, we're happy to chat about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm asking that question, I mean, partly because I'm very curious, right? Because specific examples, especially companies from Southeast Asia in the climate space, in the energy space, in the battery space, in the hardware space, I think this would really help to anchor which are the companies to look out for, right? To ride the way for an integrated ASEAN, right? But the thing is that for a lot of those type of companies, right? EV, I think we have a few in Southeast Asia, but when it comes to more deep tech, hard tech, and also hardware, and also climate tech, a lot of those innovations are more accelerated in the western part of the world, right? And you mentioned a lot of those verticals, right, that may not actually be existence in Southeast Asia. So when it comes to an integrated ASEAN, so does it mean that we have to build and develop within ASEAN, or importing, technologies, know-how from different parts of the world and having it in ASEAN is also a way to go and to bridge that gap? What are your thoughts on that? Because again, climate, hardware, deep tech, it's just one thing, right? But in the most recent case, I think we have seen, for example, TikTok Shop, right? Got banned from Indonesia. Yeah. So how do you weigh in when it comes to that integrated ASEAN framework, right? So is that a part of the framework or not part of the framework?
I think well, TikTok Shop is a much bigger topic, which I don't think we can get into too much today, I guess, right? But I think in terms of the sort of the question whether integrated ASEAN, should we have a closed-off ecosystem or whatnot, right? I think one of the keywords that keep being used, I think, within our leaders was inclusiveness, right? Meaning that, I think we want to be able to allow different countries and different stakeholders to participate in the ecosystem, right? The eventual goal is absolutely not only for ASEAN to be the market, right? But also to start moving up the value chain and produce and, be able to do a lot of these technologies, right? I think realistically though, right, I think it will take time and it will be phases before we start to get there, right? So we have to be realistic in terms of what the capabilities are already here or not, right? But the market itself is very clear. So I'll give an example to what your point is, right? There is ASEAN as an economic opportunity, but there are our dialogue and partners outside of ASEAN that we work with, right? One example is just recently, 2 weeks ago, I think we were in Korea, South Korea, right? And then we were looking at launching a new investment corridor with South Korea, right? Given the uncertainty and the state of geopolitical conditions right now, and then the decoupling of China and the US, South Korea is becoming more important as a technology hub, for example, right? So why we announced a fund there where we were looking at how can we potentially invest into companies in Korea with technologies that's unique that can help companies in our part of the world to do better. For example, I think South Korea is known to be very good in battery technology, right? LG is a strong player there. They're very good in semiconductor. They're very good in biotech. They're very good in entertainment, right? So there are areas where, outside of ASEAN where the technology or the capabilities does already exist today, and we believe that we should really leverage that as well and bring them here, transfer of knowledge, transfer of know-how, right? and then how we can accelerate, I think, the development and the growth for this region, right? And it's not exclusive to South Korea. It can be Japan, could be other areas as well, right? But I think the idea is, yes, eventually the goal is to transfer that knowledge, move up the value chain, right? I think, we are, for the most part, right, other than Singapore and Brunei, where mostly the countries in Southeast Asia, ASEAN region are sort of middle income, I guess, right? So if you want to move up from there and get out of the middle income trap, right, you have to start moving up the value chain, right? So that goal has to be there, but I think in the short term, definitely there are ways to kind of work through, collaborate, and leverage things from outside of the region to help.
So I will go back to TikTok Shop, if you don't mind, in my next question. Because I think, judging from the reaction from the crowd, it seems like, I can see people looking at me and say, please, continue to ask about TikTok Shop. So that's a heads up for you, Roderick. So going back to the integrated ASEAN, I think it's easy to just say that ASEAN as one region, but the truth is that ASEAN is made up of more than 10 different nations, and then we all speak in different languages and come from different cultures. So how does this diversity help integrate an integrated ASEAN? And it obviously poses some challenges. So just wanted to understand, from an investing point of view, how do you see this challenge? Is it a region that gives us that moat because it's so diverse and therefore it's difficult for any company to come in? And how does this, this diversity actually can actually help founders, and also how can founders operate in such a diverse environment?
Yeah, I think as I was saying, right, Southeast Asia, almost 700 million people live here, right? Different countries of different sizes as well, different socio-economic culture, different religion base as well, different political systems, right? So I think it is not that easy to lump everything into one market. And I think as a lot of players have found over the years, right, I think there are international players that have come into the market and found that maybe local wisdom is necessary to operate in this market. Maybe Uber, for instance, right? I think they were here. They had a lot more technology resources and whatnot, right? But so far they haven't, they end up exiting the market, leaving both Grab and now Gojek, I guess, as the incumbent player, right? So there are definitely challenges because I think not one size fits all. And depending on where you start, it makes a lot of sense to expand to one market. We always believe for our companies that you need to win and be very strong in your market before you go to another market. And that's where a lot of startups from Indonesia is quite lucky because the market is big enough. You can spend the time and then, think about once you become strong enough to try and tackle the other markets. Versus if you're in a startup from a much smaller country in terms of the market size or population, almost immediately as you start, if you want to grow sizably, you have to think about going to other parts of the region. Now, I think in terms of whether diversity is a strength or not for the founders and stuff, I think just taking the playbook of for Indonesia and whatnot, right? We have a motto in Indonesia, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which is unity in diversity, right? And I think that's one of the main strengths for the country and what's gotten us this far, right? So that diversity is actually a real strength for us, right? In the ASEAN region as well, and for founders, they just have to think about how they tap into it in the right way, right? The other thing is this whole culture of gotong royong, right? I guess, or collaboration, I guess, right? Where we work with each other and we figure out what is the right way to complement each other as well, right? So overall, I do believe, right, I think this whole diversity is a strength, I guess, right? It's not easy to tackle them, and historically, some of the countries, because of the might be more competitive than they are collaborative in some ways, right? Whether they compete for tourists, for the travel industry, whether they compete for manufacturing, for certain other industry, right? But as we go further into this more sort of ASEAN integration journey, there are ways to kind of work through it within an ecosystem. As again, I was trying to give an example earlier of the electric vehicle, maybe, right? So, yeah, I think that the opportunities are definitely there, right? I think you have to figure out what your main strengths are and focus on that, and communicate and collaborate across the region, I guess.
Okay, then we can talk about TikTok Shop. So I asked the question on like diversity and like the challenge of like running a company across Southeast Asia, right? So just going back to like how I would say the early days of like the tech community when, the entire startup movement started. Again, arguably speaking, we can give a lot of credits to Rocket Internet, right? And Rocket Internet is obviously not, I wouldn't say obviously, depending on your opinion, right? Is it a good thing, is it a bad thing? But I think the fact is that Rocket Internet, especially with like Lazada, has actually created this model that it's actually possible to operate across Southeast Asia, right? With Indonesia as the main hub, right? Without Indonesia, you essentially do not have a Southeast Asia story, right? Let's just put it very clearly on that. So, and you see that's only possible, even though like there were a lot of noises about Rocket Internet back then, right? There were no bans, nothing, and they were allowed to operate. And because they persisted, they created a lot of different entrepreneurs, right? And also an operating model that inspired a lot of other, I would say, big startups to grow. So going back to TikTok Shop, right? I don't have any kind of like strong opinion on that. I just asked the question with a very curious mind because the ban happens like really quickly. Of course, like you can say no comments, right? That's fine. So to me, I find it fascinating because like it is somewhat similar to the scenario of like Rocket Internet coming in with lots of money, lots of like tech know-how, operation know-how. So TikTok Shop came in, they did okay, and then really well, and then suddenly they got banned. So how does this narrative actually fit into an integrated ASEAN? Because we can't be totally insular, right? Because the competition will also make us stronger. Again, like case in point, Lazada, right? It makes all the entire ecosystem great, right? Thanks to Lazada, if there's any Lazada mafia here, thanks a lot for educating the market. You burn a lot of money to help us understand e-commerce. Anyway, so what is your take on that? Like how insular should an integrated ASEAN be, given that Indonesia is obviously a key leader in Southeast Asia? And also like I know it's kind of sensitive, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, right? But I think it's related to like the recent ban of the TikTok Shop. Just want to understand your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's fascinating what's going on, right? I think well, I mean, if you look at the history, even in Indonesia, right? I think it's not the first time there has been bans on things, right? I think just more on the global side, right? I think I think December 2015, Gojek for one day got banned as well, right? I think the president came out the next day and said that we still need it, so they reversed the ban, or before it really came into implementation, I guess, right? I think there was also export limitations, I think, within Indonesia, right? When it was necessary. I think the end of 2021 was for coal, I think, and then ended up becoming a domestic market obligation model for that. In the middle, early second quarter of last year, there was a palm oil movement as well, right? So I think ultimately, though, and I can't speak too much about the specific situation as I'm not familiar, but also about policies from the different countries. But I think from Indonesia government perspective, I think they figure out what they think is best for the people, right? And I think that's what probably end up happening, right? But and if you look at what happened as well, what was banned was TikTok Shop and not TikTok itself, right? And TikTok itself is a social media platform which is very popular, especially also in Indonesia, right? So TikTok itself is still there and it's allowed to operate and whatnot, right? I think one of the argument, and again, I am not expert on this, that was mentioned was that TikTok Shop was, that they think that the shop and the social media site should not be in one platform. I think that was the argument for that right now. Now, how and why the ban happened in such a swift way is a mystery. Typically, it takes, typically before something happens, and then even with the ban, a decisive timeline usually is much longer, but in this scenario, it's much faster. I think yes, I'm also curious. I don't know the answer to that, so maybe if there are people who knows, I think, can share, but yes. In terms of how that affect an integrated ASEAN, right? I think they operate separately in the region. The policies of the governments in the region are not necessarily unified, so I think they'll have to deal with the government in each of the countries in the region separately. So it doesn't necessarily mean that if it gets banned in Indonesia, it will get banned in other countries or not, right? So I think that is probably, at this point, a more separate discussion, I guess.
Okay, so we have a few minutes left. Like, can we, anyone has any question, you can ask about TikTok Shop if you want to, right? Yeah, because I can't ask too many questions on that. You can raise your hand and then someone will pass the mic to you. If not, I will continue asking. Oh, this gentleman over here. Oh, I thought you raised your hand. Oh, okay. All good. Okay, I'll ask a question then, right? So, since we're in the topic of like integrated ASEAN, then is there like a specific company, a specific portfolio company that you think would be able to ride the wave really well? You mentioned about Zendit, right? And Traveloka. I was just curious, like what other companies that could really ride the wave of an integrated ASEAN?
I mean, we have quite a few companies within our portfolio that does regional businesses, and I think they would all, one way or another, and maybe in different degrees of, support, benefit from this ASEAN. I mentioned we have Traveloka, we have Sendit, we have Caro, maybe Shopback, who's regional. We have a few others that's also regional or starting to grow regional. But depending on the sector that they're in and what they, and how they choose to expand, I guess it could be different varying degrees, I guess, of benefits that they'll be able to tap into, I guess. Yeah.
So will we see East Ventures investing in a lot more different countries that has like capabilities that Southeast Asia do not have? Because you mentioned about Korea, right? Are we going to expect East Ventures to do more of that?
I think we're also mindful that I think this is something that we're exploring, right? And we have great relationships so far with them. It's something that we've talked about or worked on for quite some time. I don't think we're actively in a rush or in a mindset where we just want to expand to 5 other markets and whatnot. But opportunistically, if there are things that make sense along the way, I think we are open to it. But yeah, I don't think it's something that we're actively pursuing and say that, okay, which other countries, and then we should go here and there, right? I guess, right? I think, we have a few initiatives that we just launched as well, right? So I think we want to make sure that we're also on top of it and make sure that things go very well, right? I think the healthcare area is definitely one that I think, we definitely want to focus as well, right? On top of this career side, yeah.
Okay, I think that's all for today's session. Thank you so much, Roderick. Thanks a lot for being awesome audience. Thank you.
Thank you.